and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Happy New Year! I'm Andy Hum.
It's not New Year's yet for everybody.
Almost.
I'm Ann Northrup. We are in that week.
And we are on Gay USA. That's what you're watching, folks. Thanks for tuning in.
And we are hoping for a Happy New Year. But
better
one program note. I think we told you our Philadelphia main affiliate, WYBE, was going to go off the air a couple of months ago. Then they got a reprieve and they were sticking around. I think they may disappear in the next week or two, but we are on PhillyCam, the local public access station in Philadelphia, so you can find us there now Saturday nights at 7 o'clock. And we're online at gayusatv.org all the time, so you can always find us there.
All over the world.
And I heard from a Delaware viewer who is now catching us on satellite on either the Dish Network or DirecTV, because we're on that too. So look around, you'll find us.
And we thank you for being with us. And we do have some news in this week of holiday celebrations. 10 federal judges have now ruled that Trump's ban on transgender troops is illegal and cannot go into effect.
If you think that's stopping the Trump administration from still trying to get rid of us, you're wrong. A federal judge in Atlanta has ruled that the city was justified in dismissing their fire chief for distributing his anti-gay book on the job.
The killer of a gender-fluid teenager in Iowa was sentenced to life without parole.
The vice chair of the University of Oklahoma's Board of Regents has resigned over outrageous anti-gay remarks.
Will I tell you who he resigned to?
Yeah, I know.
All right. An Irish gay man married his non-gay male health aide, and the union was celebrated far and wide in Ireland.
It's a cute story. A German activist imprisoned by the Nazis for dissent and then imprisoned again by the post-war German government for being gay has died at 99. He was quite the pioneer.
This is coming from the Trump administration. The United States Treasury has used the Magnitsky Act, you've probably heard of that if you watch the Rachel Maddow show, to go after anti-gay killers in the Chechen government, right to the top.
Anderson Cooper was on Andy Cohen's Watch What Happens Live last week, and they discussed why Anderson and Andy never dated.
Oh, I saw them on Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, okay.
All right. 2 movie reviews, The Post and
I, Tonya.
Yeah, and we're going to bring you 2 special videos this week. One is about what we can do about bullying. I'm going to show you that in about the middle of the show, bullying and harassment. And another about fathers who are standing up for their transgender kids. We were quite moved by it and hope you will be too.
Very heartwarming. So we found a spot in the schedule where it's a light news week, which almost never happens anymore, to dig these out and show them. But shall we start with the Trump administration? Yes, a couple more decisions out of federal courts against Trump's random tweet that he's now trying to enforce against trans people serving in the military.
So we are up now to 10 federal judges who have said no to that. 4 national preliminary injunctions, some of them upheld by appeals courts already. They keep rejecting emergency motions from the Trump people, and they said, well, what the hell is the emergency?
Well, because the deal is that it was during the Obama administration that they slowly but surely got to a point where they said trans people can serve in the U.S. military. Those who are already there, because there are thousands who are already there, and new recruits who want to come in.
And this allowed people to come out.
Yes,
being transgender in
absolutely.
the military.
It was basically the same process as.
And then Trump tried to pull the rug out from under them.
Wait, we're not there yet. So the Obama administration said yes, and they said that this can all start last July 1st, 2017.
Coming out.
Coming out. And yes, coming out, with new recruits starting January 1st. But then the Trump administration came into power, and Secretary of Defense Mattis got the coming out delayed 6 months to January 1st, this in a few days. And then, in the midst of this, there was this whole political thing with a budget resolution and Trump trying to appease the right-wing evangelicals. And so he randomly, one morning, without even being asked to go this far, says, no trans people in the military. All the right wing had asked for was no financing of surgeries or medical care. But he said, no, I'm going to really go all the way, and I'm banning all trans from the military.
It even upset his great ally, Caitlyn Jenner.
Well, it upset the Defense Department, which was all on board with this. They'd done this whole long, in-depth study, which proved...
He consulted with his generals,
He didn't,
which they keep saying, who are you talking about? The courts are asking these questions.
The General Carr from the Smokey and the Bandit movies, that's the general he consulted with. So the Defense Department was thrown back on its heels. All the LGBT legal organizations sprang into action, and the trans military organizations. It's, on the one hand, a tragedy that so much effort and money and time has been expended on having to fight this stupid little early morning tweet. On the other hand, the silver lining is that it has proved to be a great organizing tool, educational experience to have a national conversation about this.
And one of the latest rulings from U.S. District Judge Jesus Bernal said that the stigma of being seen as less than is not so easily erased. So when you come into court and you say, it's no big deal, we have time to adjudicate this, there's no harm that's going to be done to these people, he said that the deprivation of constitutional rights unquestionably constitutes irreparable injury.
Of course, because it is stigmatizing. So what all this means is that we are at a point where the January 1st deadline looms momentarily. And at this point, all the federal courts are ruling, and the latest are the D.C. Court of Appeals and a district court in California, that the January 1st date must be honored for allowing new recruits in and allowing service by those already in.
And when the first court ruling came down, the Defense Department said, we will comply.
Absolutely. They've said that about every ruling. They're on board. The only people who want to delay this are Trump himself and the right-wing evangelicals, who jumped on this as a great opportunity when he went even further than they had asked. But barring some last-minute, unforeseen, different ruling that they wrench out of some unknown court, this will go into effect, and people will be able to enlist, and people will be able to come out in the military. Many are already out, and some are already getting the medical care that they need and deserve, as everyone else in the military gets medical care. And so we expect this to go forward, and that is it should be humiliating to Donald J. Trump, but of course he will skate right by it.
Well, all kinds of people are taking Trump on. In this case, it's mostly our LGBT legal groups and others, but also attorneys general from around the country. And we just read that our Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, this week, is up to 100 lawsuits against the Trump administration.
Really?
Well, 100. And in the story in the Times about him, he said, the day after the election, some of my staff was so depressed they didn't want him to come to work anymore.
Schneiderman
said that.
Yeah.
That they were so depressed. But he said, we got to pick ourselves up. We got to do this. Of course, it would have been nice if you indicted him while he was still not, president of the United States for his many manifest crimes in New York. But you didn't. And of course, it's very important in New York for Eric Schneiderman to be going after the president and his crime family, because these are crimes that cannot be pardoned by the president.
Right.
All right.
So meanwhile, on better news from the Trump administration, wait till Trump hears about this, he may reverse it. The Treasury Department, which administers the Magnitsky Act, has used it to sanction a lot of bad actors around the world, including the leaders of Chechnya. Although I must say that the announcement does not mention specifically the gay men who have been...
It does at the very end when it talks about not the president of Chechnya, but another guy who works for him, who was reported to have, they said, reported to have gone after gay men.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I was looking for that.
I thought I'd read the whole order. Maybe not.
Yeah.
But
you're right. They didn't emphasize that.
Yeah. The Magnitsky Act is something that was passed by the Congress at the behest of a U.S. citizen who had a Russian lawyer, and the lawyer was killed by the Russian government. And so this U.S. guy got the Congress to pass a law sanctioning Russians and others for these kinds of bad acts. So our government announces who is not allowed to travel to the U.S. or have other sanctions applied.
And this includes the head of the republic is Ramzan Kadyrov, and this other guy is Ayub Katayev, and he's a Chechen law enforcement official, and they said he was involved in, reported to be involved in abuses against gay men. And
of course, the Russian retaliation for this when it was first passed was to end U.S. adoption of Russian children. And thus the meeting that Donald Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort and others had with the Russians that is the subject of such dispute and investigation by Robert Mueller, because the Russians came in saying, we want to get rid of the Magnitsky Act. We will allow adoption again by U.S. citizens if you get rid of the Magnitsky Act. And the Trump people have been describing this as a meeting about adoption.
Yes.
And everybody thought that was a crazy thing, but it's not a crazy thing. It's exactly what the transaction was, adoption for the Magnitsky Act sanctions.
That was Donald Sr.'s brilliant idea to say that. It was about adoption.
Well, it had a kernel of truth in it.
Had a kernel of truth. And I think Corey Lewandowski dropped into the meeting. A sexual assault complaint has been filed against the former Trump campaign manager by a woman named Joy Villa, V-I-L-L-A. She's a big Trump backer, and she says he hit her twice hard on the buttocks at a reception at the Trump International Hotel there. She is considering a run for the U.S. House from Florida and suing Corey Lewandowski.
Strange. Well,
not suing, it's bringing a criminal complaint, I think.
Well, another successful candidate, but not in the realm of violence or criminality, is Callista Gingrich, who has in fact been approved finally as ambassador to the Vatican from the United States. Now, the third wife of Newt Gingrich?
Well, she's the third wife, but the thing is, and she converted him to Catholicism.
Right.
So she is certainly an adulteress because she was going out with him while he was married to his wife. I guess that's still adultery, even though is he the adulterer, she the adulterer? But the other marriages don't count as far as the church is concerned because he wasn't married in the church.
And so the fact that he went to his second wife on her deathbed to announce he was divorcing her to marry Callista.
This is the
Pope
who rejected an out gay man from France as ambassador to the Holy See.
Yeah, but Callista Gingrich is just fine.
They call themselves the Holy See, S-E-E.
I have an apology to make, a correction. Viewers complained that I'd referred to Social Security and Medicare last week as entitlements, and that I was using it in a kind of generic sense, but it is not technically correct to call them such. When I was talking about how the Republicans are going to cut those programs, So I apologize for characterizing them incorrectly, but
Because we pay into them.
yes.
And of course, if you die, you don't get anything.
You talk about Schneiderman and his staff picking themselves up and charging ahead and suing the Trump administration. The Human Rights Campaign is gearing up for 2018. They are out to hire 45 people to work in states around the country to elect progressive candidates and get rid of some of the right-wingers, because 2018 is going to be such a huge election year.
They call them HRC rising states, and they are Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
So if you want to be in any of those states and do political work, you might consider applying for a job with the Human Rights Campaign, which is going to support that work in those states.
We are encouraged by all the people around the country who are running for office. Let's talk about some of them who are getting into the game. In Iowa, Zach Walls. Now, Zach was famous for founding Scouts for Equality when he was 19, standing up for his lesbian moms and their right to marry.
He spoke in the Iowa State Legislature on behalf of marriage equality and talked about, we showed it here on this show.
It was viral.
Yeah.
And he is running for the Iowa legislature at the age of 26 in the 37th district, if you must know. And he's finishing up graduate school at Princeton right now.
He says his top issues will be health care, particularly mental health, education, and workers' rights.
I was a political consultant for a long time. That's everybody's priority. Okay.
Not everyone's.
No. Everybody puts it a different way.
Yeah.
In Louisiana, in the 6th district, which includes Baton Rouge, a guy named Justin DeWitt, an out gay man, is challenging the conservative Republican there, Garrett Graves. And DeWitt is emphasizing not what you said, but infrastructure. Just like Donica Rome.
There are... and I may have mentioned here that one of my old high school friends, her daughter, who is a lawyer and who's worked on AIDS issues in Mississippi and worked as a lobbyist in Washington, is quitting all that to go home to San Diego and run for office. And she was at a political training session there and sent out a picture of herself with Danica Rome. Very happy to be allied and meeting with her, so good luck to her.
In Texas, speaking of HRC, a guy named Mark Farris, P-H-A-R-I-S-S, he's a former member of HRC's Board of Governors. He's going for the state Senate seat, and he would be the first out gay there in Collins, I think it's Collins County. He sued to get the same-sex marriage ban overturned in Texas, and he said, when I was accepting the fact that I was gay, there were two things I kind of thought I was giving up. One, getting married, and two, running for political office. And I need to quit, he said, I need to quit assuming what people will think. I need to allow them the choice of me, he's basically saying. He's a business lawyer, and he's married to his longtime partner, Victor Holmes. There's a Democratic primary versus a guy named Brian Chaput, which is March 6th. But in the Republican primary, one of the Republicans is Angela Paxton, the wife of the virulently anti-gay Attorney General Ken Paxton.
Ooh.
Trump won the district by 8.6%, so they think this is possible.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is, folks, all right, 8.6%. What's happening is people are coming off the sidelines who were not voting because nothing was happening, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Tremendous energy. Please become educated about what races are taking place when in your home district. As Andy has just mentioned, there are primaries coming up soon. The general election is in November, but there's a lot of action before then. And it's not too late to get involved and run yourself if you are so inclined.
Literally thousands of people are running for office who never thought of running before.
Exactly.
And that's what happens. All right.
It's wonderful.
And if the Democrats win back the House, Jerry Nadler will be the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. He's just become the ranking Democrat with the departure of John Conyers. And that's where impeachment hearings will be. Although he says, I'm not going for impeachment unless it's bipartisan. Well, sure.
In El Cerrito, California, the city council there has selected as its mayor, one of its own, this is how these city council things work, the first Filipino-American mayor of El Cerrito and first out LGBT mayor, Gabe Quinto.
He said he's going to make the city's poorest residents a priority and promised a city of kindness and empathy that survives by helping out and supporting others, and he's into
That's
building,
him on the right there.
He's into building affordable housing.
Congratulations, Mayor Quinto.
And in New York City, Fred Davey, an out gay guy who we know, is the new acting chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. He's the husband of Michael Adams of SAGE, and he was the interim director of ARCUS's social justice and LGBT programs. He served on Obama's transition team, and he's executive vice president of, wait for it, the Union Theological Seminary.
Good luck, Fred, in that new job.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're going to have an out gay president of the city council again in New York. From the same district, there is our friend and occasional Gay USA guest co-host, Corey Johnson.
Yes.
He's not only gay, he's out as being HIV positive, and is the only elected official in the state at the moment who is out.
Possibly.
HIV
Certainly in the city council, and there's, Tom Duane used to be in the city council and the state senate.
Yeah.
Was HIV positive and openly gay.
The city council members vote after the first of the year, or on the first of the year, to elect their speaker.
At their first meeting.
Speaker of the city council.
It's just you're elected among your colleagues. You make a deal among your colleagues to get the majority of the votes.
The election of Corey carries some controversy, both racial for his being a white man, and some question about his support from real estate industry donors.
Of course, he emphasizes growing up in public housing in Massachusetts.
He has an estimable voting record and legislative record, so we're still waiting to see finally whether he does get elected speaker.
Right. The mayor has already congratulated him.
Yes, so that could be a done deal.
But they're not congratulating Kirk Humphreys. This is the guy who was the vice chair of the University of Oklahoma Board of Regents, and he's now resigning over. Here's what he said on television, that if homosexuality is okay, then it's okay for men to sleep with little boys. So the president of University of Oklahoma, David Boren, disagreed with this and said the school was committed to diversity, but he thanked Humphreys for his service.
Said I do not share his views. Well, it could have something to do with David Boren's reputed homosexuality.
David Boren was a U.S. senator before he was this, and he was running for office in 1978, and on a Bible swore that he was heterosexual. Swore.
Well, Ed Koch used to swear that too. And anyway, Humphreys is the former mayor of Oklahoma City. He's a real estate developer, but he is gone from the University of Oklahoma Board of Regents.
And Boren is stepping down in June as president. He's 76 years old.
Yeah, it's time. And in Georgia, they have been arguing in court over the firing a while ago of the fire chief, Kevin Cochran.
Yes.
Kevin Cochran is a very evangelical right-winger, and he wrote a book in which it was very religious, it was very bigoted against gay people, and what he did was hand it out at work. He gave it to all the employees of the fire department. So he got fired by the city, and then he went into court and said, you're abridging my free speech rights, and this is religious discrimination, you can't do this. And the court has ruled that it was okay to fire him, not for writing the book, because he's allowed to write the book and say anything he wants, but what he couldn't do was distribute it at work like that.
Right. Now the city actually had a rule that said you had to pre-clear anything you wrote or said publicly, and the judge said, no, you can't do that.
Yeah,
that's prior restraint.
Pre-clearance is unconstitutional, but the guy was not allowed to hand it out.
Well, he created a hostile work environment. If your boss starts handing you a book that says homosexuality and pedophilia are the same thing, basically.
And a couple of other hostile work environments. In North Carolina, the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund is suing Sam's Club, the Walmart division, for discrimination against and harassment of a trans employee in the years 2011 to 2015. She has won a ruling from the EEOC, the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that she was being discriminated against by Sam's Club. So now that she has that ruling, and this is all Title IX or Title VII or whatever, or both, she is now going into federal court to actually sue them, and has obviously an excellent case. They fired her in 2015, and she charges that they fired her because she is transgender.
Attention, all of you who might run an LGBT group around the country. There's a phishing scam, phishing going on, scam going on. They represent themselves as funders for LGBTQ issues, and they say, you got a grant and we need your financial information, and it looks very official because they're mimicking the site of another site which is legitimate, lgbtfunders.org. So if you come across this is LGBTQ funders, the scam, write to Lyle at lgbtfunders.org. They want to know about it because they're trying to get to the bottom of it and stop it.
Yeah. So beware of LGBTQ funders. It's the actual organization is LGBT funders.
Okay.
And also workplace controversy. Lambda Legal Defense is having an internal fight. Employees want to unionize. Management is slowing down the process and opposing this.
I remember when our folks at Hedrick Martin stopped a union, or tried to stop a union. There was a vote, though. There needs to be a free and fair vote for these things, and that's the principle.
And one other correction, in discussing the Virginia race for the House of Delegates there, last week we were talking about the one-vote race, and that the control of the House hinged on that. And I said, because I thought it was true, that there were still a couple of other elections for the House that had not yet been decided, but evidently they have been, and it is down to this one race.
And that race is now tied because they disqualified a vote, but the woman...
No, because they qualified a vote that had been disqualified.
All right, they qualified another vote.
Yeah.
She is now challenging that before the coin toss, which is going to determine who wins the race.
Because she says, wait, you can't go back at that point and do it. We had agreed on what the vote count was, and you can't now.
She should cite Bush v. Gore.
I'm sure she is.
All right. The killer of a gender-fluid teen in Iowa, the killer's name is Jorge Saunders Galvez, 28, has the teen was Ketteri Johnson, sentenced to life in prison without parole. Horrible crime, brutally murdered when they found out Ketteri was transgender. And there's his cousin is also up on charges there. He is also facing, this guy who was convicted is also facing charges of attempted murder and assault on a correction officer. He doesn't let the grass grow under his feet.
Now, was this one of the cases that Jeff Sessions got the Department of Justice involved in?
Yes, it was the Justice Department said transgender, hate crime, it's in the law, so we're going to do it. They got involved. They have the opportunity to go in and make it a capital offense if they want to. They haven't decided on that yet.
Now, this is the same Justice Department, of course, that withdrew the Obama administration guidelines for how to treat trans kids in schools with respect. So they're basically setting up these problems. We've talked for a long time on this show about the need to teach respect and human relations in schools. I know there was an article in the Times this week about how business schools are now focusing on ethics and sexual harassment and
getting over the old boys and culture in business.
Oh yes, what was interesting was how astonished the business school professors were to have to deal with these issues. Like this is a whole new landscape for them to deal with ethics in business school. I found that a little discouraging. But we have talked for years on this show about the need to, in early education, emphasize human relations and try to prevent some of this violence, some of these harassment and discrimination lawsuits we end up with as people treat each other badly. And so this year we ran across a video that put out by something called Welcoming Schools that we thought was quite moving and instructive about some of the education that is going on in early grades. And we thought it was a great model for not only what could happen across the country in early grades, but for the kind of teaching about respect and understanding that needs to take place in every setting, everywhere. And so we thought at the end of 2017, you also might appreciate the insight offered by this
For
video.
the next 12 and a half minutes.
Sometimes they tease me that I'm short, and sometimes just because I'm a girl. Your religion's funny. Your religion is fake and it's not real.
I hear someone say that white people are more cooler than black people.
They called me an ugly head and big face and tiny hair. You're gay. You shouldn't be in this school. You're brown. He'd say, you guys are lesbians, or like, you guys are gay.
Piggy,
Weirdo.
ugly, stupid.
You're fat. You're wearing a girl shirt. And I was like, okay, I'll change my shirt.
Negro, stupido. The B word.
I don't think that teachers see everything. There are places in the school where students don't necessarily feel respected.
We know bullying happens in our school. What can we do about this? Blue was a quiet color. Well, red was a hothead. He liked to pick on blue. Red is a great This is the first time I've taught this lesson. It felt natural, like it was something that I wanted to talk to my kids about. Every time Red said something mean and no one spoke up, he got bigger. One child in particular has had a couple kids tease him, and so I thought it would be a good time for this. If you were one of these colors, how would you feel?
I would feel really, really sad.
Why?
Because it makes fun of the way you are and everything, and you can't help what you are.
There were kids who spoke up that don't usually speak up as much in a group situation.
A girl.
Whatever we were talking about hit them at an emotional level and a gut level.
He's sad and mad.
One came. One turned to the colors and said, if someone is mean and picks on me, I, for one, stand up and say no. Then yellow felt brave and said, me too. Sometimes it just takes one. I'm wondering if you ever see a red and some other colors, or people feeling sad or unimportant. I have a heart up here. And while you're saying those things, I'm just gonna crumple the heart a little bit.
She crumpled a paper heart to give us an example of our heart.
How did it make you feel?
First, it's the same and it's fine, but then once you get bullied, it starts to crumple and get hurt. Well, when I was in first grade, this big girl kept on flicking me in the head.
So that hurt.
In two ways.
What are the two ways?
One physically, one mentally. This person on my bus, he keeps on making fun of me
Does that happen lots?
every day.
Let's pretend if you were at Deborah's bus stop, what could we do as friends of Deborah to help? Quentin?
Tell the bus driver.
Okay, tell an adult.
Another thing she could do was like stand up to it like one did to Red, Miss Story.
Okay, so who would stand up to Red?
Her friends.
If all of these people stood straight up like an arrow and said, no,
No.
do you think it would help?
Yes. Baby.
2 or 3 kids came up to me right after the lesson and they wanted to tell me about things that were said to them that hurt. Meant that that was a success. I'm sorry.
So let's talk about when you feel safe, where you feel safe, how you feel safe.
We've just started Welcoming Schools program last year, and so now we're really implementing lessons after we've done a little bit of training and kind of feeling comfortable with it.
What makes you feel safe at school? Jamara?
Teachers.
Teachers might make you feel comfortable. What else makes you feel comfortable at school? Jocelyn?
I feel safe at school because there's rules.
Definitely. Rules help people feel safe, don't they? Especially when the rules are enforced, when people have to follow the rules.
It's important for them to be able to identify where they were when they were unsafe and what happened that made them unsafe.
You're gonna decide if these places are safe, unsafe, or sometimes they're safe and sometimes they're unsafe.
Most people picked sometimes safe and sometimes not safe.
That was kind of shocking to me that nobody thought the bus was safe, the stairs, or the coat closet.
I knew that the bus wasn't going to be safe, so I kind of thought that would be a good seller to get the conversation started.
What makes the bus unsafe? Now remember, unsafe can be with your body, with your words, or with your feelings, right? Luis, talk to me.
And the bus, two fourth graders called a name to one third grader about his color skin.
Do you remember what the name was about his skin color?
Yeah.
Did you feel comfortable saying or not really?
Yeah.
Okay, you can say it if you want.
They called him chocolate balls.
Has anybody ever heard anybody get called a name because of their skin color? I know I have, especially when I was little too, even as an adult.
When we have discussion like that in class, I feel like more comfortable. You get to tell someone that you know what happens to you, and I think that that's a good thing. In second grade, a boy that says whoever touched the floor is gay or lesbian.
Does anybody know what it means to be gay or lesbian?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, what does that mean, Michelle?
A girl likes another girl, and if a boy likes another boy, that means like they're gay or lesbian.
Do you really think that in the game, if they touched the floor, that they would be gay or lesbian?
No.
No.
I think that there'll be an even deeper conversation after they start recognizing and looking around and noticing that that's name calling, that makes me feel unsafe, identifying those things.
I want you to imagine that you are watching the following situation. You have to decide what you personally would do in that situation. Get help from an adult. Talk to the person in private. Ignore or walk away. Finally, here's our last sign. Try to stop it myself.
When you are with a group of friends, one of them makes fun of a younger student because of the way he or she dresses. How would you respond to that? I'm going to go with the biggest group right now. You're at the section that says you're going to attempt to negotiate or stop the situation.
It's not like bad enough that you need to get an adult so you can work it out yourselves, but you don't need to like walk away from the situation. If we could sort it out without having to get adults involved, because adults always seem to make it like bigger and harder to solve. And then the person will get mad at you for telling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Rosita, do you have something to add?
I think you should talk to the person in private because Like, you also want to stand up for your friend and the person.
You feel like you have to honor your friendship with the person who said mean things, but you also want to support the other person. One of your 4th grade friends decides to call a new student at HLA a bad name because of her skin color.
Okay, so is everyone in a spot?
I tell an adult because things like that are like more powerful than different kinds of words.
I would get an adult because if I would just do it myself, I'd probably get in trouble because I might start something too. You never know.
Well, since I'm African American and I'm like sort of familiar with this, I would like talk to the person that was bullying the person, and then if I couldn't handle it and they like wouldn't listen, then I would go get the teacher. So.
A new kid calls your friend gay. What do you do?
I would get help from an adult because adults know more about this kind of situation.
Okay, how about this group? You were going to ignore it. Xavier.
I would just ignore it because I really wouldn't know how to handle it. What if they don't know what the word even means?
Okay. The bystander is an interesting concept to me, and I think with the students too. I don't think they think of themselves as if they're witnessing something and not doing anything about it. I don't think that they really think that that's part of the whole bullying part. This is a group that would try to stop it or intervene. So, Takara, what do you have to say?
I would have said, like, maybe that's just how they are and you really can't change just the way you are. And my aunt's gay and you can't change it.
I want you to think in your mind right now what you would want to be known as. If we are going to be a bystander, we are just going to stand by and ignore the situation when someone is getting hurt. Or we can choose to be an ally.
I don't know that I will immediately see empowered allies coming to the defense of people who are being bullied and who are being teased. But my hope is that by the end of the school year, we will see that.
If kids don't feel welcome because of being other or having a difference, they're not going to achieve.
If a student isn't feeling safe or comfortable, they aren't focusing on what I'm teaching them, if it's dividing or whatever it is. If they aren't feeling safe, they're focusing on their own safety.
To me, it's a no-brainer. You have to make sure that our students are comfortable talking about difference and talking about what brings us together, what might bring us apart, so that they can ease into their learning and feel confident in their growth.
As you can see in that last credit roll, the place to look for this is welcomingschools.org. I made a mistake on the Chiron earlier and put .com. It's not, it's .org, welcomingschools.org. I'm struck always by the genius of kids who, and the way they figure stuff out and figure out when to talk to someone privately as opposed to making a more public statement to try to accomplish something. I wish they were a little hipper about, intervening in anti-gay comments, but they're learning this.
Don't be a bystander, be an upstander, as the Tyler Clementi Foundation tells us. This has to be integrated into education as a priority, not as an add-on or a feel-good program or anything. This is fundamental to even going to school. And of course, it's complicated even more these days by the internet and the fact that kids bully each other on the internet.
Well, all the more reason to make it a daily conversation.
Exactly. It has to be a daily thing, and it has to go from, kindergarten all the way through graduate school. Business
and beyond, and beyond.
Well, yes. Well, of course, now we have the bully in chief. We have someone modeling bullying of everybody.
A great learning opportunity.
Don't be like Donald Trump.
Yes.
Be a human being.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so yes, and push for these things all over the country. They should be everywhere. It should be. Should just be basic.
Well, it should just be our own reaction in our daily lives.
Yes.
And we all have opportunities on a daily basis to speak up and object to bigoted language, disrespectful treatment.
Police beating up black people.
I used to, I look for those opportunities on the golf course. There are some knee-jerk misogynist things that men say. They say, they'll call themselves a female name when they make a bad shot. They'll say, "Oh, nice shot, Mary."
Yes.
And I turn to them and I say, "Isn't it interesting that when you make a bad shot, you call yourself a woman, and yet it is the man who has made the bad shot, not a woman?"
Well, just people, I don't like the way some people use, that bitch or something, or for anybody, man, woman, etc., because it's always about taking a woman and putting them down. And let's try to get over that. I try to take some of you to task about this on Facebook. I will take your comments down. But I try to have a dialogue about it first.
All right. Have we got anything else before we get to international news?
No. There's another horrible Trump judge that William Barber of North Carolina from Moral Mondays is warning us about. A guy named Thomas Alvin Farr, who was a Jesse Helms protege and white supremacist who Trump has nominated for judgeship. So hope we can stop that one too. We have stopped 3 or 4 so far.
All right. All right, international news. Well, we celebrate the life and mourn the death, as we say, of Wolfgang Lauinger.
Yes.
99 years old, died in Germany.
Now, he stood up to the Nazis in the 1940s. There he is on the left with his father, Arthur, who was Jewish. And he was able to hide after he got out of the Nazi prison with his mother. But he was imprisoned during the Nazi era for being part of what's called Swing Kids. There was a movie with Robert Sean Leonard about that. Swing Kids who embraced jazz as opposed to the Hitler Youth movement. So, all right, so he gets out, he survives the war, and then in 1950 and 51, he was held in investigative custody for 5 months under paragraph 175, which is the anti-gay law. They were raiding places. 200 gay people were tried in what was called the Frankfurt trials. Several committed suicide, and he's thought to be the last survivor of that. But 70,000 men were convicted under that law, which was only abolished in 1994, the anti-gay law. And people sought compensation, and the government said, well, you didn't get convicted. So
you were only in prison for 5 months. But you were never convicted, so we're not compensating you. He had been an activist for repeal of the law when he was released finally, but it took another 44 years after his non-conviction for the law to disappear. On the other hand, the sodomy law in the United States was not outlawed by the Supreme Court until after that.
Until 2003.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have nothing to brag about.
Anyway, Volker Beck, who was a Green Party gay out in the Bundestag, called him a happy, optimistic, clever person who wanted his dignity recognized by the state.
So thank you, Wolfgang, for all your activism. Apologies for what you went through, and congratulations on a long life.
And here's a story that kind of warmed my heart, out of Dublin in Ireland. A guy named Matt Murphy, 83, a gay man, married his male health aide. There he is, Michael O'Sullivan, who was not gay.
So Matt's on the left, the health aide, out gay. The health aide, Michael, on the right, 58, straight, 3 kids. But Matt wants to leave Michael his house.
Because he takes such good care of him and he can't afford to pay him. So he says, I'll leave you my house. But there would be 50,000 euros, about $60,000 in inheritance taxes if they don't get married.
Too bad they're not in the U.S.
That's right. Forget inheritance taxes. So they've known each other for 30 years.
No, they still have to be related.
Yes. Murphy, well, no, you can leave things to people up to $5 million. Well, now it's going to be what? 100 million? I don't know what it is. Whatever. Anyway, let's go back to these guys.
So they get married to put together this tax situation, and you would think that the public would be horrified. You know, you're exploiting this law. Gay people just got this law passed of marriage equality for all.
Even the nuns think it's great. they congratulated them. And O'Sullivan, who's the non-gay guy, says, I want to pay tribute to the LGBT community for making this happen. Now, I've always known that among heterosexual marriages, there was a statistic that said 7% of those marriages were just for benefits. Not for,
only 7%?
Not for intimate. Well, maybe that's a reason people stay together. But anyway, Murphy said if two people can live together and help each other, that is the most important thing in life. And he said even the partners that he's had before, the male partners he's had before, it lasted because they were friends.
But they thanked the LGBT community for making marriage possible for everybody,
yes.
and thus this arrangement. And also said, we don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to exploit anyone. Right. We want you to know that we honor you, we thank you, and we are happy to be able to do this.
And they do live together. Because one of them, I mean, the younger guy was much poorer.
It also argues for an overhaul of all these laws so
Yes.
that you don't have to have artificial constructs to be able to do something like this.
Right. Okay.
Now, they're still in Bermuda arguing over whether or not marriage equality for same-sex couples will be repealed. The legislature, the parliament passed such a law, but the governor has not signed it yet, still consulting with London, I guess. But meanwhile, the government says that 4 marriages planned for Bermuda flag cruise ships can happen no matter what happens with the law.
That's because the bans of marriage, B-A-N-N-S, have already been announced, as opposed to the ban on same-sex marriage that we're waiting to hear about.
So it's all still in process.
In the Netherlands, U.S. Ambassador Piet Hoekstra, who's an anti-gay bigot, was confronted by a Dutch reporter about his anti-Muslim lies. Hoekstra had called it fake news, and the reporter showed him a tape of him saying that there are no-go areas in the Netherlands because of the Islamic movement. And the Dutch press said that Hoekstra lies about his own lies.
Okay.
All right, and we did the Pope. All right.
So we want to show you another video now, which warmed our hearts. This is a 3.5-minute video called Dads for Transgender Equality. And again, in the spirit of the holiday season, we found this particularly moving. And the dads in this video are fantastic role models. And so we'll come back with entertainment news, but we wanted you to see this.
My name is Joe Garte, and I live in Brooklyn, New York.
My name is Wayne Maines, and I live in Portland, Maine.
My name is J.R. Ford. I live with my wife, Vanessa, in Washington, D.C.
I'm Keith Thompson, live in Winterville, North Carolina.
When Pernell came out, I was just so excited to have this little girl. It was that feeling of, there's just love here.
And I think if once you hold that baby in your arms, you just want to love your babies.
I first started noticing something different about Ellie when she was in preschool. It wasn't until right after her 4th birthday party that she said, I'm a girl.
So Penelope had a conversation with Jody after a meltdown and said that everybody thought she was a girl. And Jody said, okay, but you can be whoever you want.
One night driving back from someplace, asked if he could get a binder. I said, what do you want a binder for? Well, because I want to transition. Transition? What do you mean? Well, you know, become a boy. That's when I felt the needle scratch off the record in my mind. There were a lot of thoughts going on for me. I had to deal with the loss of my daughter.
All this stuff that's going on now, we lived this back in 2011. Their solution, it was more than just bathrooms. It was everything that you do at school was different, and she was isolated. You don't want to put your kids out there, but these young people have powerful voices.
Being a dad, you tend to internalize a lot of the feelings and emotions because it's the role that you have assumed that you have to be the strong rock of the family.
I don't think that the father's perspective is seen often because we're often the second person to know. It doesn't mean that we don't play a huge role in how that child is raised.
Ever since Sky came out to us as trans, I, in the back of my mind, had these little moments of darker thoughts that would crop up about some of the negative things that you are likely now going to have to deal with. What are your peers and your friends going to say to you?
We are concerned about her safety as she gets older. Suicide rates for transgender teens, it's above 50%. The only way to try to mitigate that is to continue to educate, people, schools, administration about what are the issues when you are excluding a certain group of people.
Anytime there's, vitriol and bile that blows back from parts of society or in the media or in print or whatever, or even just peers, that takes a toll.
As a parent, you know that every single child is completely different.
This is a family transition, and that's what it needs to be.
To have Ellie kind of as a beacon in our family is really helpful for making our family tighter, making her community around her tighter.
I hope he can continue to be happy in his own skin. And if he's not there yet, I hope he gets there.
The one thing I want Pernell to always know is that his family's always here.
We're at the beginnings of what I hope is going to be seen as a change in perception. And it won't be a big mystery for much longer.
This has made all the difference in the world, parents standing up for their kids, so much.
It's an amazing revolution and extremely, extremely moving.
Very much.
So
We're verklempt.
Yes, we are. All right, a few notes on entertainment news.
Well, we did get the big reveal about why Anderson Cooper and Andy Cohen never dated, and it's because Anderson just revealed this week on the Jimmy Fallon show that when they first met, the first thing out of Andy Cohen's mouth was, "You're Gloria Vanderbilt's son." And that broke a cardinal rule for Anderson Cooper about men that he dates. So they didn't date, but they're best friends.
Yeah,
and they're going to do the New Year's Eve thing.
I find it slightly offensive that they get asked about why they didn't date. Like two gay guys couldn't be friends.
It was such an intimate conversation on Jimmy Fallon. I thought it was kind of a breakthrough that these gay men were discussing all this in a very normal way.
All right. I saw the movie I, Tonya. I thought it was terrific, fun and smart and sharp and good, and I particularly like the character Sean, who's the sort of bodyguard. He is hilarious.
And I saw the Post about the Washington Post and the Pentagon Papers with Meryl Streep as Kay Graham and Tom Hanks as Ben Bradley, and I thought it was terrific. Also, I was very moved by it. I was sobbing through a lot of it. Actually, I was.
What's wrong with you?
Because we're losing the country and these people are fighting for it. That's what makes me cry.
Well, I think that's a little much.
Norman Siegel was crying too when he saw it, apparently.
Oh, see I, Tonya. It'll get you out of that mood. Margot Robbie, who I like a lot and who should never be cast as Tonya Harding, is really terrific. And she's also a co-producer of the movie. So I think she must make this a passion project.
Happy New Year.
See you next year.
Yeah.